I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would beg. I used to look at those girls in movies, the ones on their knees in the rain, clutching at a man's pant leg, and I would feel this deep, visceral cringe. I'd think, have some dignity, have some self-respect, walk away. There are 8 billion people on the planet, and half of them are men. No one is worth that kind of humiliation. That was the old me. That was the me who had never been taken apart piece by piece, who had never had her entire world tilted on its axis so violently that she didn't know which way was up anymore. That was the me who had never loved someone so completely that their absence felt like a physical amputation. My name is Clara, and this is the story of how I begged a man not to stop, and how he never did. It started, as so many disasters do, with a good intention, a favor, a kindness. My best friend Mark had been going through a rough patch. We'd known each other since freshman year of college, bonded over a shared hatred for our intro to psych professor and a love for cheap beer and late-night debates about nothing. He was the kind of friend who would drive 45 minutes to pick you up when your car broke down at 2 a.m., no questions asked. He was the brother I never had. So when he called me, his voice tight and strained, saying he and his girlfriend had broken up and he needed to get out of their shared apartment for a while, I didn't hesitate. I told him to come stay with us. With me and my husband Ethan. Ethan and I had been married for 4 years, together for 7. We had the kind of relationship people envied, the solid kind, the kind built on a foundation of shared history, inside jokes, and a deep, unwavering respect for one another. We had a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb just outside of Portland, a golden retriever named Gus, and a future that stretched out in front of us like a clear, sunny highway. We were trying for a baby. Everything was perfect. Or at least, I thought it was. Mark moved into our guest room 2 weeks before the 4th of July. He was a shadow of his usual self, quiet and withdrawn, his usual boisterous laugh replaced by a hollowed-out silence. I felt so sorry for him. I made his favorite meals, stocked the fridge with his preferred craft beer, and gave him space when he needed it. Ethan was great about it too. He was patient and understanding, clapping Mark on the back and telling him to take all the time he needed. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have 2 such amazing men in my life. How lucky I was that my husband was so secure in himself that he didn't feel threatened by my closeness with another man. In hindsight, I was a fool. A blind, trusting, naive fool. The first sign, the first tiny crack in the facade, came about a week after Mark moved in. It was a Friday night, and we were all sitting in the living room watching a movie. I was curled up on the love seat with Ethan, my legs draped over his lap. Mark was sprawled out on the larger couch, a beer in his hand. I don't even remember what we were watching, something with explosions. I do remember the way I looked at Ethan during a particularly quiet moment, a feeling of overwhelming love washing over me. "We should get out of the house tomorrow," I said, my voice soft. "Go for a hike maybe, just the 2 of us." I felt Ethan stiffen almost imperceptibly beneath my legs. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes fixed on the screen. "I don't think we should leave Mark alone," he said, his tone flat. "He's not doing great. It might be a good idea for all of us to do something together." I frowned. "He needs time to process, Ethan. He's not going to be able to do that with us hovering over him like we're babysitters. A few hours of peace and quiet might actually be good for him." "Clara, I said no," Ethan replied, and there was a sharp edge to his voice that I rarely heard. "He's our guest. It would be rude. We can all go to the coast next weekend." I was taken aback by his reaction. It was so uncharacteristic. Ethan was always the first to suggest we go off and do things on our own, to steal little moments of intimacy. He was the one who planned our date nights, who surprised me with weekend getaways. To have him shut me down so definitively and so publicly in front of Mark felt jarring. It felt wrong. But I pushed the feeling aside. He was probably just stressed from work. I let it go. Then there were the little things. The way he started coming home from work later and later, claiming he had to catch up on a project. The way he'd disappear into the garage for hours at a time on the weekends, tinkering with his car or a piece of furniture he was trying to restore. The way he'd stop meeting my eyes when we were having dinner. The way our conversations became smaller, more functional, stripped of the warmth and intimacy we had always shared. I was confused. I was hurt. I asked him repeatedly if he was okay, if I had done something wrong, if work was getting to him. He'd always just smile a tight, placating smile and tell me everything was fine. He was just tired. He was just stressed. He'd be back to his old self soon. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. The second sign was more pointed, more explicit. Mark had gone out for a walk, and I was alone in the house with Ethan. I decided to be bold. I was wearing a silk robe, the one he loved, and I met him in the hallway as he was coming out of our home office. I leaned in to kiss him, my hand sliding up his chest. It was an invitation, a clear, unambiguous invitation. He kissed me back, but it was brief, chaste. He pulled away after a few seconds, his hands gently gripping my shoulders and holding me at arm's length. "Not now, Clara," he said, his voice soft but firm. I've got a headache. I'm gonna go lie down for a bit before dinner." "Okay," I said, trying to keep the hurt and rejection out of my voice. I watched him walk away, a chasm of loneliness opening up in my chest. He didn't have a headache. We hadn't even had dinner yet. He just didn't want me. For the first time in 7 years, my husband, my best friend, the love of my life, had rejected me. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I felt ugly, unwanted. I felt like a pathetic, desperate wife. But I still didn't suspect anything. Not really. Not with Mark. The thought was so absurd, so utterly inconceivable, that my mind simply refused to entertain it. Ethan and Mark were friends, good friends. They'd always gotten along. They had a mutual respect for one another. They'd bonded over their shared love of football, their mutual disdain for the same coworkers, their love of terrible action movies. They were the two pillars of my life, my rock and my anchor. The idea that they would betray me, together, in my own home, was so monstrous that I couldn't even form the thought. It was like trying to imagine the sun going dark. The night it all unraveled, I was at a work function, a mandatory dinner with clients at a fancy restaurant downtown. I told Ethan and Mark I'd probably be late, maybe 11 o'clock or so. I remember feeling a sense of relief as I walked into the house. It was quiet. The dogs didn't bark. The living room lights were off. I kicked off my heels, wincing at the pain in my feet, and tiptoed through the house. I didn't want to wake anyone. As I got closer to the guest room, I heard a sound, a low, murmuring voice. Mark's. He was talking to someone, probably on the phone, I thought. That's good, I thought. He's finally reaching out to people. He's healing. I walked a little closer, about to ask him if he wanted a glass of water, when I heard another voice, a voice I knew better than my own. It was Ethan. "Shh," Ethan was saying, his voice a low, soothing purr. "It's okay. It's just us. You're safe. You're with me." My blood ran cold. My heart stopped in my chest, then started pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. My brain struggled to process what I was hearing. It was like a computer trying to process code that didn't make sense. Error, does not compute. I was frozen to the floor. My hand was raised, poised to knock on the door, but I couldn't move. It was as if my body had been disconnected from my mind. I was just a spectator now, a ghost in my own home. And then I heard a sob, a broken, wretched sob from Mark. "I can't do this anymore, Ethan," he cried, his voice thick with tears. "I'm so tired of pretending. I'm so tired of looking at her. She's my best friend. This is wrong. This is so wrong." "No, baby, no, don't say that," Ethan whispered, his voice laced with a tender desperation I had never heard him use with me. "I know it's hard. I know. But I told you, I'll fix it. I just need a little more time. I need to do it in the right way. I can't just hurt her like that. You know I can't." A violent, shuddering gasp escaped my lips. It was so loud I was sure they'd heard me. I clapped my hand over my mouth, stifling the sound. My whole body was shaking. My vision swam with tears. "Soon," Mark sobbed. "Promise me it'll be soon. I'm tired of hiding in this room. I'm tired of pretending to be her friend when all I want is to be with you. I love you, Ethan. I can't do this anymore." "I love you too," Ethan said, his voice so full of love and adoration, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "I promise, baby. Soon. I promise. Now come here." And then there was silence. A soft, devastating silence that was so much worse than the words. My feet were suddenly able to move again. I backed away from the door, my movements jerky and uncoordinated. I stumbled back down the hall, my hands outstretched, feeling the walls for support. The painting in the hallway, the one we'd bought at a flea market on our honeymoon, tilted as my shoulder banged into it. I didn't even notice. My mind was reeling. The two men in my life, the two most important people in the world to me, they were in love. They were having an affair. In my house, under my nose, while I was cooking them dinner and washing their clothes and trying to have a baby with one of them. They were lying to me. They were using me. They were making a fool of me. I stumbled into the kitchen and gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles white. I looked out the window into the dark backyard, but all I saw was my own reflection, a pale and haggard face staring back at me. It was the face of a stranger, a woman who had just had her entire life ripped away from her in the span of a few terrible seconds. I didn't know what to do. I was completely, utterly lost. My two anchors had just pulled me under the surface, and I was drowning. Then, a few minutes later, I heard footsteps, the creak of the guest room door. I straightened up, trying to compose myself. I forced a blank expression onto my face, a mask of normality. I heard them walking towards the kitchen. They didn't know I was home. Their conversation was still soft, intimate. I heard Ethan murmur something, and Mark let out a soft, shaky laugh. They turned the corner into the kitchen, and they both froze. The look of abject horror on their faces was almost satisfying. "Clara," Ethan gasped, his face going pale. We thought you were going to be late." I stared at them. I looked at my husband, the man I had loved and trusted for 7 years. I looked at my best friend, the man I had taken into my home out of love and compassion. I saw the guilt in their eyes. I saw the fear. But I also saw something else. I saw the way they were standing a little too close to each other, the way Mark's hand was hovering near Ethan's, as if it was aching to be held. I saw the truth. I saw the betrayal. And in that moment, something inside of me died. "Obviously," I said, my voice flat and hollow, a sound that didn't even feel like my own. And then, the first part of the begging began. The silence that followed my flat, hollow word was heavier than any sound I had ever heard. It pressed down on me, thick and suffocating, like being buried alive. I could see their minds racing, scrambling for an excuse, a lie, anything to fill the void and explain away what I had just witnessed. But there was nothing they could say. The truth was written all over their faces, in the guilty slant of their shoulders, in the way they refused to look at each other now that I was standing there, a witness to their secret. I remember thinking very clearly that I should scream, I should throw something, I should storm out of the house and never look back. That's what you do in the movies. That's what strong women do. They grab their keys, they slam the door, and they drive off into the night to start a new life. But I didn't feel strong. I felt like I had been hollowed out with a spoon, like every organ in my body had been scooped out and replaced with ice water. I was frozen, rooted to the linoleum floor of my own kitchen, staring at two men who had just shattered every single thing I thought I knew about my life. Ethan was the first to break. He took a tentative step towards me, his hands outstretched in that placating gesture I had seen him use 1,000 times before. But this time it was different. This time his hands were trembling. "Clara, baby, listen to me," he said, his voice shaking. "Whatever you think you heard, it's not what it sounded like. You're tired. You've been working so hard. You're just exhausted and your mind is playing tricks on you. Let's just go to bed, okay? We can talk about this in the morning." I stared at him, truly stared at him, for the first time in months. I looked at the man I had married, the man I had promised to love for better or for worse, and I realized I didn't recognize him. His eyes, the warm hazel eyes that had once looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world, were darting nervously around the room. He was lying to me, right to my face, after everything. And he was so bad at it. It was almost pathetic. "Don't," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Don't you dare stand there and gaslight me, Ethan. I heard everything. I heard you. I heard both of you. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I'm so desperate, so pathetic, that I'll just believe whatever lie you feed me?" Mark flinched. He had been standing frozen by the kitchen island, his face a mask of pure terror. I had never seen him look so scared. He was always the confident one, the life of the party, the guy who could talk his way out of anything. But right now, he looked like a small, frightened child who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "Clara, please," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, just let us explain. It's not what you think. It's so much more complicated than that." "Complicated?" I repeated, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips. "You're sleeping with my husband in my house while I'm trying to have a baby with him? What part of that is complicated, Mark? What part of that isn't just the most disgusting, unforgivable betrayal a person can commit?" Mark opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. His face crumpled, and for a split second, I felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction. Good. Let him feel a fraction of the pain I was feeling. Let him see what it felt like to have everything he loved ripped away from him. But then Ethan stepped forward again, and this time his voice was harder, more desperate. "Stop it, Clara. You're not being fair. You don't understand what's been going on. You've been so wrapped up in yourself, in your own little world, that you haven't even noticed what's been happening right in front of you. We tried to tell you. We tried to show you, but you were too busy planning your perfect little life to see that I was drowning." His words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, my hand flying to my chest. "I was drowning?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "You were drowning?" "Ethan, I asked you every single day if you were okay. I asked you what was wrong. I tried to talk to you. I tried to reach you. And you shut me out. You pushed me away. You told me everything was fine when it obviously wasn't. And now you have the audacity to stand there and blame me for your affair? It wasn't an affair," Ethan shouted, his face turning red. "It wasn't an affair because I never loved you the way I love him. I loved you, Clara, I did. But I was never in love with you. Not really. Not the way I'm in love with Mark. I tried. God, I tried so hard. I wanted it to work. I wanted to want you the way you wanted me. But I can't. I can't lie to myself anymore." The air left my lungs. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The words hung in the air between us, ugly and unforgiving. I looked at Mark, who was now crying silently, tears streaming down his face. And then I looked back at Ethan, my husband, the man who had just told me he had never really loved me. 7 years. 7 years of my life, my love, my devotion, and he had been pretending the entire time. A small, quiet voice in the back of my head whispered that I should leave. I should grab my phone, my keys, and get in my car and drive. I should go to my sister's house, or my mom's, or a hotel, anywhere but here. I should pack a bag and never look back. But I didn't. I couldn't, because leaving meant accepting that this was real. It meant accepting that my marriage was over, that my life as I knew it was over. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to let go. So instead of leaving, I started to bargain. It was pathetic, looking back on it now. So deeply pathetic. But in that moment, it was the only thing I knew how to do. "Ethan, please," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, just think about what you're saying. We have a life together. We have a home. We have Gus. We have everything we've built over the last 7 years. Don't throw it all away for this, for a fling, for a mistake." "It's not a mistake," Mark whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's not a fling. We've been in love for years, Clara, before you even met him. We were both too scared to admit it. And then you came along, and Ethan thought he could make it work with you. He thought he could be normal, but he can't. Neither of us can." I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and I realized that the man standing in front of me was a stranger. The man I had considered my best friend, the man I had cried with, laughed with, shared my deepest secrets with, had been harboring a secret love for my husband for years. Years. While I was confiding in him about my insecurities, about my fears about my marriage, about my desperate desire to have a baby, he had been sitting there, nodding sympathetically, all the while hoping that my marriage would fail so he could have Ethan for himself.
"You're a monster," I said, my voice trembling. "Both of you, you're monsters. You used me. You lied to me. You made me feel crazy when I knew something was wrong. You made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one who wasn't trying hard enough. And all the while, you were just waiting for the right moment to leave me."
"Clara, that's not true," Ethan said, stepping closer to me. His voice was softer now, almost pleading. "We never wanted to hurt you. We never wanted any of this to happen. But we can't help how we feel. We can't control who we love. Please, you have to understand."
"No,"
I said, shaking my head violently. "No, I don't have to understand anything. You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy my life and then ask me to be understanding about it. That's not how this works." I was crying now. Hot, ugly tears were streaming down my face, and my whole body was shaking. I felt like I was falling apart, like every piece of me was being pulled in a different direction. I was angry. I was devastated. I was confused. And underneath it all, I was still so deeply, desperately in love with Ethan that it physically hurt. "We can fix this," I said, the words tumbling out of my mouth before I could stop them. "We can go to therapy. We can work on this. I know I've been distracted lately, with work and with trying to get pregnant. I know I haven't been the best wife, but I can change. I can be better. I can be whatever you need me to be."
"Please, Ethan, don't leave me. Please don't choose him over me." I saw Mark's face fall. I saw the hurt in his eyes, the fear that Ethan might actually take me up on my offer, and for a brief, vindictive moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Good. Let him feel what it's like to be the one who's discarded. Let him know what it's like to be the second choice. But then Ethan looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Pity. Pure, unadulterated pity. He felt sorry for me. My own husband, the man I had loved and devoted my life to, felt sorry for me. "Clara," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Clara, you don't mean that. You're not thinking clearly. You're hurt and you're scared, and you're saying things you don't mean. But I can't let you do this. I can't let you debase yourself like this. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to either of us." "I don't care about fair," I screamed, my voice cracking. "I don't care about being fair. I care about you. I care about us. I care about the life we've built together. And I'm not just going to stand here and let you throw it all away without a fight." I was sobbing now, my whole body racked with uncontrollable sobs. I dropped to my knees on the kitchen floor, my hands gripping the edge of the island as I looked up at him. I looked at the man I had promised to spend the rest of my life with, and I begged him. I begged him to stay. I begged him to choose me. "Please, Ethan," I begged, my voice a broken, desperate plea. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be whatever you need me to be. I'll give you space. I'll give you time. I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't leave me. Please don't leave me. I can't do this without you. I can't."
I heard Mark let out a shaky breath, but I couldn't look at him. I kept my eyes fixed on Ethan, searching his face for any sign of the man I had married, the man who had promised to love me until death do us part. But the man looking back at me was a stranger, a cold, distant stranger who had already made up his mind. "Clara, get up," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Get up off the floor. This is pathetic." The word hit me like a slap in the face. Pathetic. He called me pathetic. The man who had just confessed to cheating on me with my best friend, the man who had lied to me for years, was standing there, looking down at me like I was something disgusting, something beneath him. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't scared. I wasn't desperate. I was angry. An incandescent, all-consuming rage bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce, drowning out all the pain and fear and heartbreak. I pushed myself up off the floor, my hands shaking, and I looked him dead in the eye. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Both of you, get out of my house. Get out of my life. I don't ever want to see either of you again."
Ethan blinked, clearly taken aback by my sudden change of demeanor. "Clara, come on." "I said get out," I screamed, grabbing the nearest thing I could find, a ceramic bowl that had been sitting on the counter, and hurling it at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, scattering across the floor like shards of my broken heart. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Mark grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him towards the door. "Come on," he said, his voice urgent. "Let's just go. She needs time to calm down." Ethan hesitated, looking back at me with a conflicted expression, but then he nodded, letting Mark pull him out of the kitchen and towards the front door. I followed them, my chest heaving, tears still streaming down my face. I watched as they grabbed their jackets, their keys, and walked out the door into the dark, cold night. The door clicked shut behind them, and I was alone. I stood in the foyer for a long time, just staring at the closed door, waiting for something to happen, waiting for him to come back, waiting for him to realize what he had just thrown away. But the door stayed closed, and the house stayed silent, and I was left alone with my grief and my rage and my shattered heart. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been minutes, it could have been hours. But eventually, I walked back into the kitchen, my legs feeling like lead, and I looked at the mess. The shattered bowl on the floor, the scattered pieces of my marriage, lying there in ruins. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I picked up the phone and I called my sister. I needed someone, anyone. I couldn't be alone, not tonight. My sister, Rachel, answered on the second ring. She always answered on the second ring. It was one of those things about her that I had always taken for granted. The way she was always there, a constant presence in the background of my life, ready to catch me when I fell. She was 2 years older than me, but she had always been the one with her head on straight, the one who knew exactly what to say and when to say it. She was the one who had warned me about Ethan all those years ago. She had told me he was too quiet, too reserved, too hard to read. She had told me that a man who couldn't open up to you wasn't a man you could build a life with. But I had been young and in love, and I had dismissed her concerns as jealousy, as her being overprotective, as her not understanding the depth of our connection. I had never apologized to her for that. I had never told her she was right. And now, standing in the wreckage of my kitchen, I realized I would never get the chance to tell her in the way I should have. "Clara?" Rachel's voice was groggy, confused. It was past midnight, and she had 2 kids under the age of 5. Of course she was asleep. "What's wrong? Is everything okay?" "No," I said, and my voice broke on the single syllable. "No, Rachel, everything is not okay. Everything is the opposite of okay. I need you." I heard the rustle of sheets, the muffled sound of her telling her husband, Tom, that she had to go. I heard her footsteps on the hardwood floor, the click of a door closing. "Clara, talk to me," she said, her voice sharp and focused now. "What happened? Are you hurt? Is Ethan okay?" "Ethan," I said, and I couldn't help it. A bitter, broken laugh escaped my lips. "Ethan is fine. He's more than fine. He's with Mark. They're together, Rachel. They've been together for years, behind my back, in my house, while I was cooking them dinner and washing their clothes and trying to have a baby with him." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in Rachel's head as she processed what I had just told her. She was a lawyer, a corporate litigator who had seen the worst of human nature in deposition rooms and courtrooms. She was not easily shocked. But this had clearly thrown her for a loop. "Clara,"
she said slowly, carefully, as if she was handling a bomb that might go off at any moment. I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Don't leave anything out. Start from the beginning. And so I did. I told her everything.
I told her about Mark moving in, about Ethan's strange behavior, about the way he had pulled away from me, about the conversation I had overheard in the guest room, about the confrontation in the kitchen, about the begging, about the shattered bowl, about the door closing behind them as they walked out into the night. By the time I was done, I was sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm coming," Rachel said, her voice firm. "I'm on my way right now. Tom is going to stay with the kids. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Just sit tight, okay? Don't do anything. Just wait for me." "Okay," I whispered, and I hung up the phone. I didn't sit tight. I couldn't. My body was vibrating with an energy I didn't know how to contain. I paced the length of the living room, my bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. I stopped by the bookshelf and looked at our wedding photo, the one we had framed in silver. Ethan was smiling, his arm wrapped around my waist, his eyes full of a love I had believed was real. I picked up the frame and stared at it, searching for any sign of the lie. But there was nothing, just two people who looked so happy, so perfect, so completely in love. I threw the frame against the wall. The glass shattered, raining down on the carpet in a glittering cascade. I felt a small, sick sense of satisfaction as I watched the pieces scatter. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. I went through the house like a tornado, pulling photos off the walls, yanking books off the shelves, throwing everything I could get my hands on. I ripped the sheets off our bed, the bed where I had slept next to him every night for 4 years, the bed where we had made love and dreamed of the future and tried to create a life. I tore the pillows apart, scattering feathers everywhere. I opened his closet and grabbed his clothes, his stupid expensive suits and his soft cashmere sweaters, and I threw them on the floor and stomped on them like they were the enemy. But no matter how much I destroyed, I couldn't destroy the feeling inside me. The feeling of being betrayed, of being used, of being so completely and utterly fooled. The feeling of having my entire life ripped away from me in a single, devastating moment. By the time Rachel arrived, I was sitting on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage, my hands covered in tiny cuts from the broken glass. She didn't say anything. She just knelt down beside me, wrapped her arms around me, and held me while I cried. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my hair. "I'm so sorry, Clara. I know this doesn't help, but I'm so sorry." "It doesn't help," I choked out, my voice muffled against her shoulder. "None of it helps. Nothing helps. He's gone. He chose him. He chose him over me." "I know," she said, her voice gentle. "I know." We sat there for a long time, just holding each other. Eventually, she helped me up and walked me to the bathroom, where she cleaned the cuts on my hands and wrapped them in bandages. She made me a cup of tea, even though I told her I didn't want it. She sat with me on the couch and just let me talk, let me vent, let me rage and scream and cry until I had no tears left. "What do I do?" I asked finally, my voice hoarse. "What do I do now?" Rachel looked at me, her expression serious. "First, you take some time. You grieve. You let yourself feel all of this. You don't make any rash decisions. You don't do anything you might regret. And then, when you're ready, you get a lawyer. You file for divorce. You take him for everything he's worth. You walk away with your head held high." "I don't want his money," I said, shaking my head. "I don't want anything from him. I just want him to hurt. I want him to feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling right now." "And he will," Rachel said. "He will. Men like Ethan, they don't get away with this kind of thing. Not really. They might think they do, but they don't. Karma always catches up. You just have to be patient." But patience was not something I had in abundance. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and endless tears. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think about anything other than the betrayal. I replayed the conversation in my mind over and over again, searching for clues I had missed, trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. Was I not attentive enough?
Was I not loving enough? Was I not enough, period? The questions ate away at me, gnawing at my self-esteem until there was nothing left but a hollow shell of the woman I used to be. I called in sick to work. I couldn't face my colleagues, couldn't face the pitying looks and whispered conversations. I told Rachel I would handle it, that I just needed a few days to get myself together. But I didn't get myself together. I fell apart. I fell apart in ways I didn't know were possible. And then, a week after the confrontation, I got a text from Ethan. It was short, cold, and to the point. We need to talk. I'm coming by the house tomorrow at 3 p.m. to get my things. Please make sure you're not there. I stared at the text for a long time. The audacity of it, the sheer, breathtaking audacity. He was coming to get his things. He was telling me not to be there. He was acting like I was the one who had done something wrong, like I was the one who should be ashamed. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too angry, too hurt, too broken to form a coherent reply. But I was there when he came. Of course I was. I waited in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, my hands folded in my lap, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to see him. I needed to see him. I needed to look into his eyes and see if there was any remorse, any regret, any sign that he was as devastated by this as I was. When he walked through the door, I felt my breath catch in my throat. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his face was pale, and he had lost weight. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, who had been tormented by his own guilt and indecision. For a brief, fleeting moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he had come to his senses. Maybe he was going to tell me he had made a mistake, that he wanted to come home, that he loved me after all. But then I saw Mark standing behind him, hovering in the doorway like a nervous shadow, and the hope died in my chest. He hadn't come alone. Of course he hadn't. He had brought his new boyfriend to help him pack up his things. It was a power move, a way of showing me just how little I mattered to him. "Clara," Ethan said, his voice flat, "I thought I told you not to be here." "Too bad," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "This is my house, Ethan. I can be wherever I want." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I don't want to fight with you. I just want to get my things and go. Can we please just make this as painless as possible?" "Painless?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Painless? You're asking me to make this painless? You destroyed my life, Ethan. You destroyed everything I thought I knew about myself, about us, about our marriage, and you want me to make it painless?" "Clara, please," Mark said, stepping forward. "This isn't good for anyone."
"Don't," I said, pointing a trembling finger at him. "Don't you dare speak to me. Don't you dare act like you have any right to be in this house, in my house, after what you did. You were my friend, Mark, my best friend, and you stabbed me in the back. You both did." Mark's face crumpled, and I saw tears welling up in his eyes, but I didn't care. I didn't care about his tears, his guilt, his pathetic attempt at remorse. I didn't care about anything except the rage burning inside me. "I want you both out of my house," I said, my voice cold, "and I want you out of my life. I never want to see either of you again. Do you understand?" Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "I understand," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry, Clara. I know that doesn't mean anything to you right now, but I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." "Too late," I said, and I turned away from him. I watched them pack. I watched them walk through the house, taking everything that was his. I watched them load boxes into his car, watched Mark carry out the suitcases, watched them close the trunk and get into the car. And then I watched them drive away. I stood in the driveway for a long time, staring at the empty road. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the lawn. I felt a cold wind blow through me, chilling me to the bone. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to find some warmth, some comfort, but there was none. That night, I drank. I don't drink. I never have. I hate the taste of alcohol. But that night, I drank an entire bottle of red wine. I sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the remnants of my shattered marriage, and I drank until the room started spinning. I drank until the pain started to fade, replaced by a numbing, foggy haze. I drank until I couldn't feel anything at all. And when I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and a mouth that tasted like ash, I realized that I had hit rock bottom. I had let him destroy me. I had let him take everything from me. My dignity, my self-respect, my future. He had taken it all, and I had let him. But I was done letting him. I was done being a victim. I was done crying and begging and hoping he would change his mind. He wasn't going to change his mind. He had made his choice, and I had to make mine. "I'm going to get a lawyer," I said to Rachel when I called her that afternoon. "I'm going to take him for everything he's worth, and then I'm going to move on with my life." "That's my girl," Rachel said, her voice full of pride. "That's exactly what you're going to do." But moving on was easier said than done, because even as I talked to lawyers, even as I signed the divorce papers, even as I started to rebuild my life, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I couldn't stop wondering what he was doing, who he was with, whether he was happy. I couldn't stop the obsessive thoughts, the endless loops of self-doubt and recrimination. I couldn't stop loving him, and that was the worst part. The love, the stupid, stubborn, inexplicable love that refused to die, no matter how much he had hurt me. I hated him. I hated him more than I had ever hated anyone in my entire life. But I still loved him. I still wanted him to come back. I still held on to a tiny, pathetic sliver of hope that one day he would realize he had made a mistake and come home. That hope was my undoing, because that hope was what led me to beg him again. A few months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into him at a coffee shop downtown. It was an accident. I had been craving a latte, the kind from the little place on the corner that used to be our spot. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking at all. I just walked in, and there he was, sitting at a table by the window, alone. I could have turned around. I could have walked out, but I didn't. I walked up to him, my heart hammering in my chest, and I sat down across from him. "Hi," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, and I saw the surprise in his eyes. "Clara," he said, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "Where's Mark?" "Gone," he said, his voice tight. "We broke up." The words hit me like a thunderbolt. They had broken up. He was alone. He was single. And here I was, sitting in front of him, looking at him with eyes that hadn't stopped loving him no matter how hard I tried. "Ethan," I said, and I could feel the desperation creeping back into my voice. "Ethan, I know this is crazy. I know I should hate you. I know I should never want to see you again. But I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop loving you. I know you made a mistake. I know you hurt me. But I don't care. I just want you back. Please, please, Ethan, I'm begging you. Come home." He looked at me, his expression unreadable, and then he smiled. It was a small smile, a sad smile, but it was a smile. "Clara," he said, his voice soft, "you don't have to beg." I felt my heart soar. I felt the hope I had been trying to bury rise up in my chest, warm and bright. He was going to come back. He was going to choose me. He was going to make it right. But then he leaned forward, and his eyes met mine. "Because no matter what you say, no matter how much you beg, I'm never going to come back. I'm never going to choose you. I told you the truth in the kitchen that night. I never loved you, not the way you loved me, and I'm not going to pretend anymore. So you can beg all you want, but it's not going to change anything." My heart shattered all over again. I sat there in that coffee shop, the steam from my untouched latte curling up between us like a ghost, and I felt the last piece of my heart crumble to dust. He had just told me, with a calmness that was more devastating than any scream, that my begging meant nothing, that my love meant nothing, that I meant nothing. And the worst part, the part that would haunt me for years to come, was the look in his eyes. There was no anger, no guilt, no pity, just a flat, hollow indifference. I was a stranger to him, a woman he used to know, a chapter in his life that was already closed.
I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My voice was gone, swallowed by the massive, choking grief that had taken up permanent residence in my throat. I just sat there, staring at him, waiting for him to say something else, something that would make this all make sense. But he didn't. He just picked up his coffee, gave me one last dismissive nod, and walked out of the coffee shop. The door chimed softly behind him, and he was gone. I stayed in that chair for a long time. The barista, a young girl with pink hair and a kind face, came over to ask if I was okay. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. She looked at me with concern, but she didn't push. She just refilled my water and walked away. I was grateful for that. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to explain. I just wanted to sit there and let the numbness wash over me. But numbness, I would learn, was a luxury I couldn't afford. Because when the numbness faded, the pain came rushing back, more intense than before. It was a physical pain, a deep, gnawing ache in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I thought about all the years I had wasted on him, all the love I had poured into a man who had never really loved me back. I thought about the nights I had lain awake, wondering what I had done wrong, trying to fix something that was never meant to be fixed. I thought about the baby I had wanted, the baby we had tried for, the baby that would never exist because the man I had wanted to be the father was never really there. And I thought about Mark, my best friend, the man I had trusted with my deepest secrets, my darkest fears, my most vulnerable moments. He had listened to me cry about Ethan, had held my hand and told me everything was going to be okay, all the while knowing that he was the reason Ethan was pulling away. He had sat across from me at dinner, laughed at my jokes, helped me plan my future, and all the while, he was planning a future that didn't include me. The betrayal was so complete, so total that it felt like I had been erased, like my entire existence had been a placeholder, a stand-in for the person Ethan really wanted. I wasn't a wife, I wasn't a partner, I was a cover story, a beard, a convenient illusion that had allowed him to hide from the world, from himself, from the truth of who he really was. I don't know how I made it home that day. I don't remember the drive or the walk from the car to the front door. I just remember collapsing on the couch, my body giving out beneath the weight of everything I was carrying. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind a blank white void. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there, empty and broken, waiting for something to change. But nothing changed. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. I went through the motions of living, but I wasn't really alive. I went back to work, but I was just going through the motions. I talked to my friends, but I didn't really hear them. I smiled and nodded and pretended to be okay, but I wasn't okay. I wasn't even close to okay. Rachel tried to help. She called me every day, dragged me out of the house on weekends, forced me to eat and shower and take care of myself. She was a bulldog, relentless in her determination to pull me out of the hole I had fallen into. But I couldn't be pulled. I was too deep, too far gone. The hole was all I knew. It was my home now. And then, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a letter. It was from Mark. I almost threw it away. The sight of his handwriting on the envelope made my stomach turn. But something, some morbid curiosity, made me open it. I unfolded the letter and started to read. "Clara," it began, "I know you probably hate me. I know you have every right to. What I did to you was unforgivable. I betrayed you in the worst possible way, and I've had to live with that guilt every single day. I'm not writing this to ask for your forgiveness. I'm not writing this to make excuses. I'm writing this because I think you deserve to know the truth, the whole truth." I read on, my hands trembling. Mark told me everything. He told me about how he and Ethan had met before I came into the picture, how they had fallen for each other in college but had been too scared to act on it. He told me about how Ethan had started dating me because he thought it was the right thing to do, because he thought he could force himself to be straight, to be normal, to have the life his parents had always wanted for him, He told me about how they had reconnected after years apart, how the feelings had come rushing back, how they had tried to fight it but couldn't. And then he told me something that made my blood run cold. He told me about the baby. "We knew you were trying to get pregnant," Mark wrote. "We knew how badly you wanted a child, and we knew that if you got pregnant, it would make everything so much more complicated. So Ethan took steps to make sure it didn't happen. He got a vasectomy. Years ago, before you even started trying. He never told you. He was never going to tell you." The letter fell from my hands. I stared at the words on the page, my mind struggling to process what I had just read. He got a vasectomy. He had made sure I couldn't get pregnant. He had let me hope, let me dream, let me plan for a future that was never going to happen. He had watched me take pregnancy tests, watched me cry when they came back negative, watched me blame myself for something that was never my fault. And all the while, he had known. He had known the truth, and he had let me suffer. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal, guttural scream that clawed its way up my throat and tore out of my mouth. I screamed until my throat was raw, until I had no voice left, until I collapsed on the floor, sobbing and shaking and gasping for air. The betrayal was so deep, so profound, that it felt like I was drowning. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything but feel the overwhelming, crushing weight of what had been done to me. Rachel found me an hour later, curled up on the floor in a fetal position, the letter clutched to my chest. She read it, and I watched her face go pale with shock and fury. She wanted to call Ethan. She wanted to scream at him, to curse him, to make him pay for what he had done. But I stopped her. "Don't," I said, my voice a hoarse whisper. "Don't give him the satisfaction. He doesn't get to see me like this. He doesn't get to know that he broke me. Not anymore." Rachel looked at me, her eyes full of tears. "Clara, he took everything from you. He took your marriage, your future, your chance at having a child. How can you just let him get away with that?" "I'm not letting him get gaining strength. I'm just not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me suffer. He doesn't get to have that power over me. Not anymore." It was a turning point. A small one, but a turning point nonetheless. For the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt anger. A cold, focused anger that burned in my chest like a steady flame. It wasn't the hot, explosive rage I had felt in the kitchen that night. It was something different, something sharper, something that gave me clarity. I made a decision that day. I was going to rebuild my life. Not for him, not to prove anything to him, but for myself. I was going to take back everything he had stolen from me. My dignity, my self-respect, my future. I was going to be happy. Not because I had moved on, but because I deserved to be happy. Because I had spent too long letting someone else define my worth, and I was done. The journey wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain was so overwhelming that I couldn't get out of bed. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. But I kept going. I took it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. I went to therapy. I started running. I reconnected with old friends. I threw myself into my work. I did everything I could to fill the void that Ethan has left behind. And slowly, painfully, I started to heal. A year after the divorce, I sold the house. I couldn't bear to live there anymore, surrounded by memories of a life that had never really existed. I bought a smaller place, a cozy apartment in the city, and I filled it with things that made me happy. Art, books, plants. I adopted a cat, a scruffy little thing I named Oliver. He was grumpy and aloof, and he made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. I started dating again. It was terrifying at first, putting myself out there after everything I had been through. But I took it slow. I went on a few dates that went nowhere, a few that were awkward and uncomfortable. And then, when I least expected it, I met someone. His name was David. He was a graphic designer, quiet and kind, with a gentle sense of humor and a smile that made my heart flutter. He didn't know about Ethan, not at first. I wasn't ready to share that part of my life with anyone. But when I did, he listened. He held my hand. He told me I was brave, that I was strong, that I was worthy of love. It was the first time in a long time that I believed it. But even as I moved on, even as I built a new life for myself, I couldn't completely escape the past. There were moments when the pain would come rushing back, triggered by a song, a smell, a memory. There were moments when I would look at David and wonder if he was too good to be true, if he was hiding something, if he was going to hurt me the way Ethan had. I had to learn to trust again, to open my heart to someone new, to take the risk of being vulnerable. It wasn't easy. It took time. But I was determined to not let Ethan win. I was determined to not let his betrayal define the rest of my life. And then, 2 years after the divorce, I got another letter. This time it was from Ethan. I almost didn't open it. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself he was a ghost, a shadow, a chapter that was long closed. But curiosity got the better of me. I tore open the envelope and read his words. "Clara," he wrote, "I know I have no right to reach out to you. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But I'm writing this because I need you to know something. I was wrong. About everything. I thought I knew what I wanted. I thought I had found the love of my life. But I was wrong. Mark and I didn't work out. He left me. He found someone else. And I was left with nothing. I was left with the realization that I had thrown away the only person who ever truly loved me. You." I read the words, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction, just a quiet, peaceful emptiness. He was reaching out to me, trying to pull me back into his orbit, but I was already gone. I had moved on. I had built a life for myself, a life that didn't include him. I wrote back, just a few lines, short and to the point. "Ethan, I don't hate you. I don't love you. I don't feel anything for you anymore. You made your choice, and I made mine. I've moved on. I hope you find the peace you're looking for, but I can't be part of that journey. Please don't contact me again." I sent the letter, and I didn't look back. Today, I'm sitting on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset. David is inside, cooking dinner. Oliver is curled up on my lap, purring contentedly. I have a good life, a simple life. A life that is mine. I think about that night sometimes, the night I begged Ethan not to leave. I think about how broken I was, how desperate, how willing I was to sacrifice my own dignity for a love that was never really there. I think about the woman I was, the woman who thought she couldn't survive without him. And I feel a profound sense of gratitude for that woman, because she was the one who got me here. She was the one who survived. She was the one who refused to give up, even when giving up seemed like the only option. I used to think that the begging was the most pathetic moment of my life, that I had hit rock bottom, that I had lost all my self-respect. But now I see it differently. I see it as a moment of strength, because even in my darkest hour, even when I was on my knees, I was still fighting. I was still trying. I was still refusing to let go. And in the end, that's what saved me. Not his love, not his return, not his apology. My own stubborn, unyielding refusal to give up on myself. I learned that you can't force someone to love you. You can't beg someone to stay. You can't make someone choose you if they've already chosen someone else. But you can choose yourself. You can decide that you are worthy of love, of happiness, of a life that is full and rich and beautiful. You can decide that you are enough, exactly as you are. I thought for so long that I had lost everything, that the betrayal had taken everything from me. But it didn't. It gave me something. It gave me myself. I don't think about Ethan anymore. Not really. He's a ghost, a memory, a lesson learned. I don't wish him ill, and I don't wish him well. He's just a person, flawed and broken and human, just like the rest of us. And me? I'm okay. I'm more than okay. I'm happy. I'm free. I'm finally, truly, completely alive.
তোর কারণে শেষ করিলাম ইহকাল আর পরকাল, তোর কারণে শেষ করিলাম ইহকাল আর পরকাল। কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল আমার, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল। দুঃখের পরে আসে রে সুখ, আমার বেলায় নাই। আবেগে তাকাইলেই যেন প্লাবন হইয়া যায়। দুঃখের পরে আসে রে সুখ, আমার বেলায় নাই। আবেগে তাকাইলেই যেন প্লাবন হইয়া যায়। যতনে তুলিয়া গাছে টাইনা টাইনা তুলে সাল, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল আমার, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল। কাদা মাটি মিশ্র কইরা বানাইলাম এক পাখি, কারণ সারাই নোটিশ দিয়া করিল চালাকি। কাদা মাটি মিশ্র কইরা বানাইলাম এক পাখি, কারণ সারাই নোটিশ দিয়া করিল চালাকি। কই মল্লিকে মরলেই বাঁচি, আমার নিশির নাই সকাল, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল আমার, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল। তোর কারণে শেষ করিলাম ইহকাল আর পরকাল, তোর কারণে শেষ করিলাম ইহকাল আর পরকাল। কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল আমার, কে জানিত হবে এমন পুরিবে কপাল।